Welcome to your Middle School Administrator's Winter Assessment Training. My name is Kiana Hennigan, and I'm your District Assessment Coordinator, and I'll be taking you through what you need to know today. Let's get started.
By the end of this training, you'll understand how our department communicates with you and how to pass those communications on to your staff. You'll understand the basics of winter assessments, who, what, when, and what are you expected to do. You're going to learn about what you can do to start preparations for spring and to think ahead on that. You're going to learn about expectations around accommodation and supports for state and national assessments. You're going to learn about what you can do to make sure that your school has a nice, smooth testing season in the spring. And the most important thing that I hope you learn is that you can always call, email, or Teams your friends here in assessment and research for help. We are literally standing by, eager to answer all your questions and help you with anything we can. So please reach out and never think twice. Here's your middle school agenda. I'm not going to read it aloud to you, but I do have some kind of exciting stuff to share around ML supports as I get into the spring portion of the training. But before we go on, I want to talk about Smokey Bear. Smokey Bear reminds us that we ourselves individually, we could prevent disaster. We could prevent a forest fire. Likewise, I'm going to have some slides with Smokey the Bear on them, and they remind you that you can do a small amount of pre-planning, execute some caution, let some people know about some new supports, etc. Those are things you could do now to prevent a problem later. I love the bang for my buck of doing something kind of simple now that I'll be excited about when future me finds it, a little present for our future us's. So please keep an eye out for Smokey Bear to appear on all of our slides about preparation. Moving on. This is the assessment year. You'll notice we're in this kind of nice little window right here where it's almost all white. As we go through the year, things start to kind of chunk up a little bit. So we're in this great season of planning where we can have a little opportunity to be thoughtful about assessment in our school. I got you down here, and the WLA is our next thing, and we're going to talk about that real quick in just a second. But moving through the year, we're going to cover things happening between now and February. WIDA access. To begin with, there are a number of WIDA assessments. The WIDA Access is the annual accountability assessment for students who are receiving English language services or who qualify for English language services. These are our ML students, and there is an expectation from state and federal accountability that students will exit within 6 years. This is the assessment that they use to show proficiency and can exit program. This is what we're looking at for that. Who's going to test? We're looking at all of our K through 12 students who qualify for English language services. The window for WIDA access opens on January 29th. If you turn in your building plan and it says January 29th, I'm going to reject it because their systems probably aren't going to be working in an optimal fashion on the 29th. Let's let other school districts figure out what's broken and then swoop in the next week and work that out. If you'll notice on your building plans that I mentioned it there, I'm mentioning it here because I want it to be noticed. Please note that the proctor trainings are facilitated by categorical and assessment and research. We do have those scheduled already, and they should be on your teachers' calendars. This is your administration training. There is no further administrator training available, and your building plan is due December 15th. Let's cover your duties. You're going to select a school coordinator. This is typically the person who oversees multilingual learners at your school. They're going to coordinate with your ML designee and coach to make sure that things run smoothly. So please choose wisely. This person must be an administrator. You're going to complete your building plan and get it turned in by December 15th. You're going to Ensure that if you have paper booklets at the middle school level, which is very unlikely, but should you need a paper booklet, if you have one, it needs to be locked up securely. You should have secure storage that the ML designate gets into. Um, please be thoughtful. You're going to make sure your staff attend the training to which they're invited. We understand things come up, but the earlier we're notified, the better. We do not have staffing to give the training multiple times. You're going to ensure that your staff have appropriate testing spaces, coverage, and are notified of interruptions like drills or announcements that are going to happen. It's very important that our students are able to access this test and really show what they know. We do not want bad administrations of WIDA access. You're going to touch base with your designee on a weekly basis to review the progress email for the ML department and troubleshoot any issues that arise. A lot of times at schools, issues in terms of getting testing done in a timely fashion occur because of either a scarcity of space or because of absenteeism. Please help your staff with those problems. You're going to report your incidents in the ARMS system in EDS. And you're going to submit your paperwork by March 25th. I will send you a checklist as we're approaching March, probably in late winter, just to let you know what you need to do. So please don't worry in advance about that. I will help you as soon as the time comes. Thinking about access and how that's how we exit services and the expectation that we exit services and become proficient within that 6-year window. These are our students who are progressing. As you can see, this was in ELPA years. We had decreasing of students who were on track to exit services within 6 years. Then we had some time, and now we're with the WIDA, with the access test, and you'll notice that we are trending in the upward direction, but we need to be trending in a much further upward direction. This is a WASIF goal, and we need to be thinking about it carefully. There are some things that we can do to improve our performance on WIDA and improve our WASIF. So let's think about those carefully. We're going to provide our accommodations and supports with fidelity. That means making sure students know what supports they're supposed to have and that we're administering them properly. We're also going to review students individually. I'm going to be sending you lists of the supports that students are able to access, and it's important that your staff in your ML department are reviewing those supports and making sure that they're being correctly identified and provided with fidelity. We're going to make sure that the test is provided in an appropriate and supportive setting. We want teachers who are providing our students the best opportunity to show what they know and are able to do. And part of that is, being in the correct sort of room for taking the test with the materials they need, with an informed um, and appropriate staff. We're going to make sure that we're also providing training and support for all of our staff to meet the needs of our multilingual learners in a variety of contexts. It doesn't matter what is being taught. Um, our ML students are in all of our classes, and they need to be able to access um, the curriculum and instruction for that course. So we want to be making sure that we're using our GLAD or our PSYOP, whichever is appropriate, just to meet the needs of our students. We want to be increasing their ability to access their on grade level learning in every class they're in. All right, now thinking about the WIDA alternate access, or as people call it, the ALT. When we're talking about alt access, we are talking about students with significant cognitive disabilities, which in Washington state means that they're 2 standard deviations below in both adaptive and cognitive. These are students that if they're in an SBA year instead of SBA, they're taking WAAIM. Please note that at the present time, students can't exit services using WIDA Alt Access, but we are tracking their progress, and it's important that the state and federal governments are aware of the progress that our students are making and the wonderful things they're learning. Who is going to test? These are our K through 12 students who qualify for English language services and have significant cognitive disabilities, are duly qualified kids. The window for these is the same as the regular access window, 129 through 322. The proctor training is facilitated by myself and our friends in special services. The administrator training is this. The building plan is due December 15th, and I just want to highlight some important factors from that building plan. One, you're going to select your school coordinator. My advice to you is that you select whoever is over special education. I know that's a little shocking because it's a WIDA test, but this is the person who's going to need to be familiar with the case managers, the paraeducators, and the special education department, and with the students who have um, disabilities. So we want that person to know who they are, so that's a good choice for that. You're going to complete your building plan and get it turned in by December 15th before we leave for break. So I have some light reading over break. We're going to work with our case managers to select appropriate proctors and ensure that they attend training. Your proctor can be a case manager, they can be a paraeducator. In the past, we've suggested very strongly that they be paraeducators, and the reason is we want to minimize overall class disruption. Um, we want to think about, okay, this is a one-on-one assessment that's going to be given to a student outside of the classroom environment. Who's going to be um, teaching that class? Who can we move staffing around to more easily cover? And the answer is probably a special education paraeducator. That is why we've always suggested it. However, there are other factors that you may want to consider. Factor one is this person should know the students and be able to understand the communication style of the students. Some students with disability have a disability that impacts their communication. Not all, but some do. And if you have a student who has idiosyncratic communication, then we need to make sure that the person can understand them. You know your students, you know what their situation is, so you'll be able to understand, does the student need a specific person, or will any of their special education staff be sufficient? So think on an individual level. This person needs to be able to also work without significant management to complete testing on time. There will be nobody who can chase the person around and make sure that they're giving the test in a timely fashion. Um, Although we would like you to be tracking how they're going, we know it's not possible for administrators to be standing around during testing to help with that. So it needs to be someone who can do that without you doing so. Moving on to the next page of administrator duties. Um, you need to make sure that your proctor can give an assessment in a one-on-one environment successfully. If the person can't handle it or has like grave concerns, those are going to be a problem for your school later on. So we want to pick somebody who's independent and dependable and can get this accomplished. You also want to consider how many students you have and the availability of your selected staff member to complete the testing in the allotted window. If you have 15 students, it will be very hard for one person to get through all 15 students in the allotted time unless they really know how to shake a tail feather. So please think about, what is the time available? How many students do I have? Does the person know these students? Does the student have a communication need, and who would best fulfill that? We want to think about all those things, and it is a detailed process. So that's why I've outlined it here for you so you'll have this information. Please also make sure that appropriate storage is available for secure tests because you're in middle school. You're not going to have a whole bunch of WIDA access tests the way an elementary school might have them. So please make sure that you have some place that the person giving this assessment is going to have access to that is under lock and key. That's really important. Please make sure that the staff have access to appropriate testing spaces, whether that's a table in the back of the classroom where they're regularly able to give that assessment, or a separate space. We want to give an appropriate space for one-on-one testing. Please touch base with your proctors to check on progress in that first week of March. We want to make sure that we're not thinking, oh, this is going to be so fast, I'm going to run through it really quickly, and then have students who are absent or have any problems with staffing, we want to have a nice even pace through the window with an emphasis on the early portion of the window, just so that we're not running late. If you're having problems getting testing done in a timely fashion, you're going to want to help troubleshoot those, and I can help you with troubleshooting if you give me a call. You're going to report your incidents in ARMS in a timely fashion, and you're going to submit your paperwork by March 25th, just like with the access test. And I will send you an email checklist if I need to send you a reminder, and otherwise you'll be getting a checklist in the principal's packet. Don't forget about WIDA Screener. WIDA Screener, the 3000th WIDA test I'll tell you about today, is still going on in your school, and we still need to make sure that we have appropriate testing spaces, that you have managed the interruptions, make sure that if there are going to be interruptions planned that day, that your staff are aware of that and can attend to proper planning. You're still reporting your incidents in ARMS. If you had earlier WIDA screener incidents, please report them in ARMS. ARMS is now functioning. For WIDA screener, it had not been early in the year, but it is now up and running and available for you to use. So if you did have an incident in the fall, please go in and enter it. I will be checking what's in ARMS against my records, and if I don't see an incident report in ARMS and there's supposed to be one, I will follow up with you. So if you're trying to remember, you can relax. I have a list and I will follow up. Submit your paperwork, please, by June 10th. That's the standard spring testing paperwork due date, and I will send you a checklist in the spring to remind you of what you need to do. Thinking about iReady for winter. We've got that winter window that's going to spring open as soon as we start school back up on January 2nd. So please make sure that you have a schedule that's going to allow all your students to complete the assessment. Make sure that your staff know what they need to do and understand that schedule. Please make sure that someone assigns diagnostics. Either you, as an administrator, can assign a diagnostic for all your students and just get that done with one person clicking, or your teachers can assign their diagnostics on their own days. Whatever your school is comfortable and familiar with, you should do, but don't forget to do it. You're going to make sure that all your students are properly assessed in compliance with best practices and state law over district assessments, and you're going to track progress and follow up as needed. If you have not looked at your user permissions, you should probably look at your staff list and make some updates to your staff list in iReady, so that new teachers have access and old teachers do not have access. If you've had any teachers who have moved on to other schools, please do that. In case you missed it, in Appendix 7, we do now have an optional iReady window in the spring for you. It is no longer a required spring window, and that opens on April 29th. All the same stuff that's under admin duties you will still need to do if you're going to offer those diagnostics in the spring. I'm happy to support you in that work if you would like to do that. Let me know how to support you better. NAEP. If you are a NAEP school, you've already been notified. The one thing I want to remind you about on this national assessment of educational progress is that this is the first year we're going to be using our own Wi-Fi to administer the test, but they won't be our own computers. Please make sure that your field tech knows what's going on and is available on your testing date. You'll notice down here in this orange box, this bright orange box, that there is a half-hour planning meeting that your field tech needs to attend with you and your NAEP proctor team. And they're going to need to be there on the day of testing. And all of that is to ensure that your students are able to access the test. This is very important and it is required. So please get this into your field tech's calendar if you haven't already. Next steps will be to upload some individual student information. I am standing by to help you if you need any support in that work, so please let me know. And then, of course, please make sure you have a space all set up that is appropriate for giving an assessment in and that is already reserved on your testing date, which you already have. Okay, world language assessment. You still have some stuff to do. World language assessment is going to start actually the week that this training becomes available for you to view. So let's look. First things first, we're going to communicate with our staff about our test dates. One of the things is please make sure they send the students promptly to the testing room. Please make sure that we're minimizing interruptions. Let staff know, hey, we're testing in the library today, and so no one needs to be sent down there. No one can come in here. It's closed. Let your staff know in advance. Please let your staff know that we cannot use GoGuardian or class policy software. That's that software that prevents students from going to other websites than the one the teacher wants them to. If that GoGuardian or class policy interacts with student accounts while the students are testing, it will kick them out of the test. And we don't want that. So please let your teachers know. That's something you could even potentially put on hall passes. Please ensure that your office managers are aware of there are materials. The materials are going to come in a day or two before the test. They need to be held in the office to await proctors. Proctors will know to go to the office, check in, and collect their stuff. If your school person wants to take the stuff and go straight down to the library and just let the proctors know, that's totally fine. But your office managers need to be told that those are coming and their name will be on the box. So that will be confusing if they're not aware they're coming. Please make sure your office manager is aware of when testing is happening so that they can keep track of whether proctors have arrived. If a substitute proctor does not arrive at the expected time, please call Annalise or myself. I'm at 4057, and we can also send another person to cover in case they're running late. We can call them on their cell phones and find out what's going on. We will help you so that your test date doesn't get all mangled. I know that you guys have a lot of room constraints, so I'm trying to support you with that, and you can help me help you by letting me know if they're late. Please avoid giving announcements or any other disruptions on your testing day. These testing days have been in your calendar for quite a while now, so hopefully people will know to avoid those dates. Please make sure that phone interviews are promptly scheduled. Your staff member who is supervising WLA on testing day is probably the person who's scheduling these phone interviews, and we do not want to wait. Once we tell you to schedule a phone interview, please get back to us promptly. We can't get a score until those interviews are done. And generally speaking, we'd like to be done by winter break if at all possible. So if you could please ensure that that occurs, we would be most grateful. When you receive your score letters to families as well as the score reports, please make sure that you're filing the file copy and distributing the family copy as soon as possible. The reason that I bring them up is that it is timely. We want to make sure that things are getting onto transcripts in a timely fashion. So that means getting those signed credit letters flipped around to your registrars and getting that information put onto transcripts right away. There is no WLA score record database. So we want to credit our students. We want to file our CUME file copies. We want to get all of that done right away. If we have any mobility and the student withdraws without properly processing their records or getting their records into CUME files, then there's no evidence that they ever took the test. The other school will never know. They will get nothing. It will have been a big waste of their time. It's important. We get kids all the time who are like, I took a test at some point somewhere and I think I was supposed to get stuff. And you'll be shocked to find out that is a very difficult thing to follow up on. So please be timely. All right, moving on to the SAS. This is our survey about various aspects of school. We give it to staff as well as to students and families. And then we use those results to make significant decisions. So the more buy-in you can get, the more responses we could get, the better off we are. We want to make good choices. So please encourage people to participate. Once again, the students that we're talking about are all of your middle school students. Please note the new flag, the staff survey window has been separated from the student and family survey window. So the staff survey will now go out January 16th through February 16th, whereas the student and family survey is going to be through February 26th through March 29th. Please note that change. If you had a staff meeting set in which to do the survey, please make sure it still falls within the staff meeting window. Training, there is no training. The building plan for this is due on December 15th, and you have some admin duties. You're going to complete those building plans and turn them in by December 15th. You're going to send the communications at the appointed times. You're going to ensure participation by keeping track of who's participated. We suggest that you check your participation rates in Panorama on Mondays and take action if participation is low. You can do that under the school menu and student comparison response rate. Please remind your staff to give the survey to students. We have these students as a captive audience, and so it's not a crazy goal to expect at least 90% student participation, and that is our goal. So please follow up if you've noticed all the students in Bob's class have not done the survey. Give Bob a reminder that we need to get that survey done, and we use that survey to make important decisions. Changing gears now to Spring WAAIM. This is our federal accountability assessment, just like the SBA, but this is for students with significant cognitive disabilities. It's administered by a case manager in a one-to-one setting. Scores are reported online through a special website called DRC Insight. These are all of our students in the standard SBA WACUS grades. The window is very long. It's January 29th through May 3rd because this is a portfolio type assessment given in a one-on-one environment. It's very time consuming. Teachers need to have all their data entered by April 24th. The proctor training already took place in October because we wanted to give all of our staff ample time to select the assessments carefully and then provide them. But they will not be able to enter any data until late January. There is no administrator training other than this, and your building plan is due December 15th. That's something you can work with your case managers on. You're going to select your school coordinator, who will be an administrator over special education usually. You're going to complete your building plan in a timely fashion, get it turned in by December 15th. You're going to make sure that you are notifying Penny Bravo if there are new WAAIM students. Your case managers almost certainly know to do this, but if you are noticing that you have WAAIM student who's new, you may want to say, "Oh, hi, Bob. Did you let special services know about your new WAAIM student?" Because Penny does have to manually code all of our WAAIM students, and if she does not, if she's not able to do that, then we cannot do the data entry. You're going to review the status email that I send you on probably the 25th, but it might be the 26th. And that status email is going to say, "Hello, administrators of such and such school. You are done and everything is fantastic. Have a terrific day." Or, "You are not yet done. This is what is missing." If anything is missing, it needs to be completed by May 3rd. There is no wiggle room, much like the SBA. That test will close at 5 p.m., and that is the end of that. You're going to make sure that your paperwork gets submitted by May 6th. I will send you a checklist in the principal's packet as well as the monthly outlook. And if we get towards May 6th and I haven't gotten it yet, I will also send you a supplemental email message to remind you so that you're not late. Interim assessment blocks. These are your online assessments in English and math. You give them through the WACAP portal, just like a regular SBA. This is for students in grades 3 through 12, and it's by teacher and school choice using these assessments. You'll find them in curriculum maps. They're optional. The window for giving them is November through June. You want to think very carefully about interims in June. I can help you think about strategy there if you want to use them. The proctor training is facilitated by your school. I also have a PowerPoint I'm happy to come and present about choosing interim assessment blocks to your staff, but you are also able to do that activity yourself if you'd like. The administrator training is provided by me by request, so let me know if you want it. The building plans do not exist for interim assessment blocks. Your duties are twofold. You need to make sure that your staff is aware of any changes to interim systems and that they have access to all the training materials. That was in the principal's packet already from when the system opened. I'm happy to dig that packet item out for you if you need it. The second item is make sure that if you want training that you get it onto my calendar early, or if you want a PowerPoint to go over with your staff, I'm happy to send you that as well. When you are doing interim assessments, note I put in a brightly colored block here. Interim assessments are a really good opportunity to ensure that students know how to use their supports and accommodations ahead of spring testing. Um, when I say ensure your students know how, that means you're going to go through all the steps of planning supports and accommodations. Who's going to train the kid, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to cover that in a lot of depth in upcoming slides. Tide management. Tide is the system that sends all of our student information to the tests so that our students are able to have tests that are appropriate to them. That means their accommodations and supports are in there. That means that their grade level and other things about them are all in the system. We load supports centrally in this district. The next load for IEP and 504 supports and accommodations direct out of our IEP system is January 16th. ML supports will be loaded the exact following day, January 17th. That is an intentional choice. And then rosters will be loaded on February 12th. We like to give a little bit of time for term 2 classes to settle. If you're giving interims in particular, you want to be paying attention to those dates. If you're giving interims prior to February, there's some additional stuff you want to be thinking about. The next load after this will be in March. All right, so let's think about our tide management. You should pick a tide manager. This is a person who's going to maintain tide. It probably shouldn't be an administrator. It probably should be someone else in the school, or multiple someone else's. Things that this person should have already been doing is, well, you should have identified a tide manager by now and had them trained. I have tide management trainings November 28th, December 6th, January 9th, all at 3 p.m. Passwords all tide. I'm happy to invite and send a calendar invite to anybody who wants to attend. Shoot me an email about that. And if you had a tide manager already and you've identified them and they've been trained, they should have at least gone through and updated your staff. Your staff were loaded in August based upon the list of staff who was at your school at that time. Your staff list will need to be edited. So please look at that list and ask yourself who's missing and who shouldn't be here. Next steps. You need to be coding supports for new ML students, new IEP students, updated IEPs, updated 504s. Those need to be updated from time to time. Be thinking about that. You need to check your transfers. You're going to get transfer students coming in and they're going to have some coding in Tide, and it could be weird. It could be mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. It could be on purpose, but it's not appropriate in this district of a choice. We want to make sure we're not just keeping whatever coding shows up. We want to be thoughtful about what we're providing to our students. If you're missing students, it takes about 8 days. It could be shorter. It's probably not more for a student to show up in Tide. A student can't test unless they're in there. If the student is taking more than 8 days to show up in Tide, you should put in an LMS help desk ticket to ask if something is wrong. Let's talk SBA task checks. For IEP teams, you should already be doing these best practices in IEP meetings. You should be asking some guiding questions when you're selecting your accommodations. You should be asking, is this relevant to the student's disability? Does the student have this support and this support is connected to the student's disability? Are they using it? In class, do they have experience with it? Or are they going to have experience with it because you guys are teaching the student and they're going to use it extensively this year? And then the third thing is, will the student be able to and interested in using the tool, or are there barriers? For example, if you said, oh, the student will use noise buffers, but there's no way the student's going to wear those noise buffers on their head because they're sensitive to things touching their ears, for example. It's not a good tool. We're not going to use that tool. We need to find the right tool and give the student the tool. So you want to be thinking about those questions: relevance, experience, and interest. Those are some of those things that we want to talk about. All right. So next steps. When you're in an IEP meeting, there's a tool that is being selected and coded. That needs to get its way into Tide. So your choice is you're going to wait until January when the next load is, or if you're going to have students accessing interims before then, you need to make sure those tools are hand coded into Tide. So tell your Tide manager in writing. You're going to identify and inform the staff member who's training the student. Is it the classroom teacher? Is it the case manager? Is it a paraeducator? Who's going to train the student in the use of the tool? Who's going to make sure the staff member knows how to use the tool? We're going to want to include any additional needs in spring SBA planning. If you know the student needs abacus, you need to know, okay, they need the abacus, but the clicking is super loud, so they need to also have a small room, so we need to be keeping track. That student needs a small room. This other student needs one for their scribe. You need to start thinking about resources in your SBA planning. Start thinking about it now, not later. We've got Smokey right here on the slide. Okay, here's a task for administrators. You need to start thinking about your timing. So you need to block out some time for proctor training. You'll need at least a half an hour for that. You need to think about the administration of your tests in a kind of general blocky sense. When do you need to start doing your training tests? Are you giving a bunch of interims so you already did some training and practice tests to go through tools? Or are you going to be doing that right before the summative? There needs to be some time blocked out for that and to ensure that teachers know how to do it. And then how will you schedule your testing? Are you testing a bunch of grades together? Are you spreading testing out? You need to start having those planning sessions with your staff. Don't forget to include your field techs. Online tests have technical needs. Okay, let's just talk about mapping out supports. So let's just say you said my student needs an abacus. Abacus is a tool we're going to learn how to use this year. Your student starts out up here with this abacus discussion. Step one is he needs to get there. What does he need? To learn how to use the support. Who's going to teach that support? When are they going to do that? When is the due date for getting that done? When is the student going to practice? Who is going to supply that abacus and when? Is the kid going to get out the abacus themselves? How is it going to work? You got to think about how it's going to work. When are you going to meet with the student to talk about it? Let's say you met with a student. The student's like, you know what? I'm really struggling with this abacus. What I actually needed was a rec and rec, which is a totally different tool that's used differently. So maybe you need to figure out how to revise that. And then you see ahead the X, the testing date, the ultimate goal on a map. Does the student need any special tools or special proctoring? Meaning, is there a physical person or item that needs to be set aside for the student? Who's going to make those arrangements? Where are those items going to be? How is this going to be conducted? When you are doing your IEP, if you're thinking through these things really nice and early, then you're going to be able to get through all of these steps. Who's going to teach the student? When's the student going to practice? How are we going to check in and make sure it works for the student? And then how are we going to handle the logistics of testing days? You should be thinking step 1, 2, 3, 4. Think them early and it will be easier. That's why Smokey's here on this slide. Likewise, we want to practice our supports and accommodations. We have black line icons. This is an icon. An icon is a symbol indicating a thing. What does this symbol mean? It's this. It's a toaster. A toaster is a toaster is a toaster. This is a toaster. But it's a weird looking toaster. This is not a toaster that you and I are familiar with. So would this be a good line icon to say, oh yes, put an arrow on here and say, ooh, toaster, that away? No, it'd be terrible. You want this. This is what students know. There's some bread in there. It's obviously a toaster. It looks like a toaster. It's a toaster. Very clear. You put the sign up, there's an arrow under it, and it says the toaster is this way. This says there's a thingy over there. If we look at the supports and accommodations, sometimes we have symbols that are very meaningful. If you're an old-timey DJ spinning records a long time ago, this is a microphone. That means microphone to you. Recording is the red dot for our students. And it'd be great if we could choose. But when we have a speech to text icon, it's not the red dot, it's this, and we don't get to choose. So instead of telling a student, work it out, this is also a toaster, like good luck, we want to actually say, hey, that's a microphone. That's your speech to text microphone button, and that's what's going to record your voice. If nobody tells your student that, they're over here with the toasters. They don't know. So we want to think, how can we ensure that your student knows? Step one is give them that opportunity to practice in the classroom as part of regular class. So who's going to train the student on that support? The student's using speech to text? Great. Who's making sure they know how to use it in the classroom environment? When are they doing it? How are they doing it? Do they have the stuff they needed? Who's providing that stuff? How is that stuff being provided? Does it need stuff? Like if they're using speech to text, I would expect that they'll have a microphone on a headset. Who's giving them that headset? Who's making sure they have that headset when they're in the classroom when they need speech to text? Next, it's the same questions again, but with the WCAP portal. Who's going to train the student that they need this old-timey microphone button to use speech to text? Is it the classroom teacher who's going to do it during a special training test session, or is it, a one-on-one para? Who's going to do it, and do they need to make sure that they have, for example, the headset? It's exact same questions in both places. And then we want to consider the supports when we're planning our administration. How many headsets do we need with microphones? How many students are using speech to text, and how do I get those materials to them, or do they already have them? Moving on, but still talking about supports, we're talking about new math and science supports for our Spanish speakers. And that is ML staff can now identify students to toggle between Spanish and English for that math SBA and their walk. So you'll see there's a little button and it has a little globe on it. And I'm not going to try and read this aloud. I do not speak Spanish, but they're going to push the little button and they could go between Spanish and English back and forth seamlessly. But do note all of their little navigation icons and all of their control system buttons are all going to be in Spanish if you set that up. Now, ML staff are going to identify those students, and that's who's going to be able to switch. Because for not every student, would it be useful to have it written in Spanish if you've never um, had formal education in writing and reading in Spanish, then that may not be useful to you. So we may not want to give it to you. But your ML staff are going to make the decision. They're going to make sure that it gets coded by your TIDE managers. We also have an additional support because now text to speech is going to work in both English and Spanish. It used to be when we click on Spanish presentation, they would appear stacked instead of being able to flip between screens, and it would only read the English. Now it's going to read whatever's on the screen at the time, and each screen is separate as we saw in the previous slide. So when you open up in Spanish presentation, you'll see here is text to speech in Spanish. And then if we were on the English screen, it would read the writing on the screen that was in English, even though the button would still say in Spanish, speak, whatever option. So we just want to keep in mind that we are teaching students how to access these tools. We're teaching our staff to look for which students should have these tools. We're not overwhelming our students with a bunch of tools that aren't useful to them. We've got an updated designated supports for ML document. We've got some changes that we made to the designated supports that all ML students get. Namely, we're removing the automatic access to the paper word-to-word dictionary. We're finding most students don't use that. We don't want to code that the student had it if they didn't, so that has been removed from our central coding. It's been added over here on page 2. But you'll notice that all the stuff that we code for every student is up here. You'll see down here, I remind you that you need to train your students on how to use these tools or they're useless. Up here are some scenarios that we provide for you to think about critically on individual student situations. So for example, as we saw on the previous screen, we can change presentation to Spanish. Here's the scenario under which a student would need to access that Spanish language math test, for example. And then down here at the bottom, we've got the NNAP and RAIL, the recently arrived English learner policies for students who've been in the country for 365 days or fewer in a U.S. school. Those are our students who are exempted from participation in English language arts. Just a little reminder of the exact rules at the bottom of this page that I just want to make sure everybody clearly understands, and I'll cover again in the spring. And then the last thing, this seems to be a little known fact. Students can answer on the Math SBA in Spanish or English or Spanish and English. And there's nothing that needs to be coded. We just have some biliterate scorers that are grabbing each test. And if someone says, ooh, this kid responded, I think, in Spanish, then it gets flagged, it gets sent over to a Spanish scorer. And the Spanish scorer, who is biliterate in English and Spanish, is going to score that Math SBA. So if your student does answer in Spanish, it's not a big deal. That's totally fine. More exciting things. I'm actually really excited about this. I made you a new support. I made what I'm calling the ML default upload template. It's an Excel spreadsheet where you just drop in the student's SSID and then select which language you want their glossary in. And then you can load it up in Tide. I made you some nice little instructions on how to do that. Loading how to update the spreadsheet. It takes a manual process that was fraught with the ability to mess things up that would be consequential, and has made it really, really straightforward and simple and hard to make a bad error with. So those are all available already on DocuShare, and it's intended for use for one student at a time. Um, it's really exciting stuff, guys. Man, is that an exciting spreadsheet. More supports for our ML students. I've been working hard on making a video. The video is not ready yet. I'm devastated I can't demo the video for you, but it shows you how to go through for each test, the ELA CAP, the ELA PT, both math tests and science tests, how to find the supports that we code centrally for our ML students. It's intended for a teacher to be able to watch it real quick, um, maybe when the students aren't there, and then go into that practice and training test when the students arrive in the classroom. And then I made also a reference sheet that shows you where to find the buttons that I demoed in the video. So the reference sheet isn't really intended to be used by itself. It's kind of confusing and scary looking because it's got a billion arrows on it, but it's intended to be used after you watch the video so that you can show your students where all their stuff is. I don't expect that people watch a video and then remember every single detail of it. So I made that reference sheet for them. So that's a thing that is new and exciting for teachers, and that video will be coming soon. We're having technical difficulties, the difficulty mainly being that I need to learn how to use the software. All right, assessment security. We need to make sure that we're getting security training out to any district employee or contractor, so someone with an official contract with the district, like a one-on-one nurse or a student teacher. If they're not proctoring the assessment, but they need to be physically present, that person needs to do that security packet. They need to get it to you, and you need to hold on to it. That is not to say that anybody, just because they work for the district, should fill out a security packet and then stroll through testing rooms. Only people who are supporting the assessment or who need to quietly walk through the space a time during the test should be going through the room. What we don't want is people giving tests to students in a space where staff are just coming and going constantly. We don't want to distract our students during critical testing. Secure booklets. As a middle school administrator, you're not going to have a lot of secure booklets through the year, so we need to make sure that you have a good limited access secure location to secure any booklets that you do receive, like alt access, for example. Please make sure that you're setting that up and that the people who need access to them can get access to them. Please do not send those secure booklets through district mail. We will send someone from my office to come collect them. They will be hand delivered either by my office or by categorical. Do not put them in district mail or in regular mail. And please use the sign in, sign out forms that are in the box to ensure chain of custody. Nothing is worse than two different people using the same materials to give different tests, and then finding that one of them's lost it, and then you can't tell who it was who had it last, so you can track it down. Use those forms. Communications. We've been through all of this. We sent you we went through this earlier in the year, but just to review, we have the assessment calendar that went out in the fall. We have monthly assessment outlooks that come out right around the end of each month that tells you what you need to do next month. Please make sure that those are getting forwarded out to your leadership team so they know what they need to do. We've got communication to principals. These are action items. They have due dates, they have instructions. We try not to send a lot of superfluous stuff. Please forward them to relevant staff ASAP. If you're having trouble getting through them, it's a lot of communications. I know because I also get communications to principals and have to do stuff with them. Pick someone in your office who's got a spare second who can review it quickly and let you know what you need to do. You don't want to miss the stuff that's in that packet. And then email. I tried really, really hard not to pester you guys. So, an email that I send you is either very timely or very specific to your school and it needs an action. Please make sure you're taking care of it. I swear to you, I will not send you like anything extra, only the stuff that I'm either told to send you or that I have to send you. Looking ahead to spring, we've got spring building plans coming out in early February and being due in early March. The next training I do with you will be in person, and those are coming in late February. You should have already had an invite. If you don't have an invite on your calendar between the 22nd and the 29th, or you have a new conflict, please reach out right away to me. We've got iReady Diagnostic. We've got Smarter Balance coming up. We've got WACS coming up. We've got YM coming up. I'm going to cover all these topics as we go into that spring training, along with a brand new Proctor training. So lots to cover at that time. If you need help, this is a list of people who are hanging around waiting to help you. We want to help you. We want to help you. Our job is to facilitate you being able to do your job. So please never hesitate to contact anyone on this list. And if you do need to contact someone on this list and you can't remember who it is and you can't find this list, you can always call me. I am standing by to help you. I will get you where you need to be. And that's it. That's the end of this presentation. I look forward to hearing questions. I have some office hours coming up, and the links will be in the email where you got the link to this very video. Please don't forget to indicate that you did complete the video in the survey that will be attached to the email. And that's it. Hope you are having a terrific day.